I'm David Culver in Beijing, and this is CNN.
Or rather via mini elevators from a kitchen above the drive-through lanes. Taco Bell says the design is a response to the way fast food orders have changed during the pandemic, but I would like to think that somewhere the Jetsons are celebrating that they manifested this dream come true. Our coverage continues now with one Mr. Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. I'll see you tomorrow.
Happening now, an 11-year-old survivor of the Uvalde massacre begs the U.S. Congress to make sure it doesn't happen again. She joined with parents of mass shooting victims at a raw and very heartbreaking hearing right in the midst of urgent negotiations on gun reform. Also tonight, the chairman of the January 6th Select Committee reveals that Ivanka Trump's video testimony may be played during the new hearings. Will there be bombshells as the panel begins going public tomorrow night with the results of its insurrection investigation? And a death threat against the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. An armed man is arrested near Kavanaugh's home and charged with attempted murder amid growing fears for the safety of the nation's highest court. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. And we begin with desperate new calls for action on guns by victims, families, and survivors of the most recent shooting massacres here in the United States. They gave voice to the unfathomable loss, the suffering, and the frustration felt by too many Americans right now. Our chief congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, reports.
Do you feel safe at school? Why not?
Because I don't want it to happen again.
And you think it's going to happen again?
11-year-old Mia Cerrillo recounting in harrowing testimony how she pretended she was dead in order to survive the massacre at her school in Uvalde, Texas.
There's a door between our classrooms, and he went through there and shot my teacher and told my teacher goodnight and shot her in the head. And then he shot some of my classmates and the whiteboard. When I went to the barracks, he shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was gonna come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
What did you do then when you put the blood on yourself?
Just stay quiet, and then I got my teacher's phone and called 911.
The parents of a murdered fourth grader, Lexi Rubio, describing the agonizing wait as they frantically tried to locate their daughter.
I left my daughter at that school, and that decision will haunt me for the rest of my life. At this point, some part of me must have realized that she was gone. In the midst of chaos, I had the urge to return to Rob. We didn't have our car at this point, and traffic was everywhere. So I ran barefoot with my flimsy sandals in my hand. I ran a mile to the school, my husband with me. We sat outside for a while before it became clear we wouldn't receive an answer from law enforcement on scene.
Before receiving the devastating news that shattered their lives.
Soon after, we received the news that our daughter was among the 19 students and 2 teachers that died as a result of gun violence.
The gut-wrenching testimony from a pediatrician who treated the victims.
Those mothers' cries I will never get out of my head.
Witnessing this.
2 children whose bodies have been pulverized by bullets fired at them, decapitated, whose flesh had been ripped apart, that the only clue as their identities was a blood-splattered cartoon clothes still clinging to them, clinging for life and finding none.
And the mother of a victim from the Buffalo grocery store massacre detailing the injuries her son has endured.
As I clean his wounds, I can feel pieces of that bullet in his back. Shrapnel will be left inside of his body for the rest of his life. Now I want you to picture that exact scenario for one of your children. This should not be your story or mine.
All demanding action from Congress.
We demand action. We seek a ban on assault rifles and high-capacity magazines. We seek to raise the age to purchase these weapons from 18 to 21 years of age. We seek red flag laws, stronger background checks. We also want to repeal gun manufacturers' liability immunity.
No citizen needs an AR-15. These weapons are designed to do the most harm in the least amount of time.
But many of those changes will not be included in any final deal in Congress, given GOP opposition to restricting access to high-powered semi-automatic rifles.
Why do you oppose reinstating the assault weapons ban?
We're trying to get an outcome, guys.
Senate negotiators are instead focusing on a narrow set of changes, including bolstering states' red flag laws, providing billions for mental health programs, money for school security, and allowing juvenile records to be searched in background checks. Even though it doesn't go far enough for many Democrats, senators are willing to give the talks a chance.
How concerned are you that this guns deal is not going to go as far as you want, restricting access to guns?
I think it will be incremental. I think it will be necessary things, not sufficient to stop the level of carnage we're having. But, God, we haven't done anything since Parkland, since Columbine on the national level. So I'm hopeful, tempered hope, that we can get something done that will be meaningful.
And we just caught up with Texas Senator John Cornyn, who's the chief Republican negotiator, and asked him about the calls from those witnesses that they should do more than what is currently being proposed. He told us, I understand that we want to do something that will save lives. And Wolf, he briefed Senate Republicans behind closed doors today, gave them a general outlines of this emerging deal. We're hearing Republicans are divided over this package, and it's still uncertain whether a deal can be reached and it can pass the Senate. Wolf.
Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill. Thank you very, very much. Let's get some more on all of this. Joining us now, CNN's Omar Jimenez. He's joining us from Uvalde, Texas, along with our senior legal analyst, Laura Coates, and our law enforcement analyst, Anthony Barksdale. Laura, what does it say that families who have experienced so much horrible loss, painful loss, and an 11-year-old survivor were actually forced to plead with Congress to act today?
I mean, really, it's unconscionable that it's even happened. But the idea that we're about 2 weeks removed from some of these horrors, and there's still a lot of information they do not know, and yet they felt compelled to elevate their voice. I mean, a young girl wanting to tell people her story, in part because she knew that she did not feel safe any longer. And you can imagine the school-age children who are listening to her story, even though parents don't want to have their kids exposed to this, to hear what she has endured and the parents who have lost them. I know the power of testimony as somebody who has tried many cases and watched juries in a court of law be persuaded by seeing the people and the human faces to what we've described. And I'm hoping that at some level that notion of what happens in a court of law will translate in front of the committees that are hearing this testimony to persuade them about the imperative nature and the urgency of having negotiations that are not futile but fruitful, particularly when you see the harm and the devastation and knowing, frankly, Wolf, the uncertainty of when it will happen again.
Yeah, it's so painful. Anthony, how hard is it to actually hear that Uvalde pediatrician describe how these kids' bodies were mutilated by these deadly weapons?
It was very hard to hear. During my career, I saw the damage that assault rifles and various calibers can do to the human body. But for that type of weapon to be used on children, it's tough to listen to, but we need to hear it, because we need drastic changes here. What we currently have in place isn't working, and children, innocent children or shoppers at a supermarket should not be victimized by active shooters, by killers armed with high power, high capacity assault rifles.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Omar, you're there in Uvalde, Texas. This community's grief was clearly on display during this hearing today, wasn't it?
Yeah, Wolf, what we heard in this testimony really matched a lot of what we've heard in this community, that when it comes to processing what happened a little bit more than 2 weeks ago, now it's not just about what happened that day. It's about the feelings that persist and endure day in and day out for these parents who, in many cases, are second-guessing what should have been everyday decisions. I spoke to the grandfather of a young survivor who told me that she still hears the sounds of bullets and gets scared at even the slightest sounds. As another teacher says, he is going to go to the ends of the world to try and get some form of change here. So as awful as it was, what happened, again, a little bit more than 2 weeks ago now, many people still are grieving, and we are still continuing to see burials of loved ones, and it's not over for people.
Now, Laura, do lawmakers here in Washington need to understand that even when a victim survives a shooting like this, these physical and emotional wounds, they last a lifetime?
They absolutely do, and I hope that they really understand that. I mean, it's not unheard of for even the Supreme Court, let alone legislative bodies, to understand the emotional and the psychosocial reaction when you're contemplating how to craft legislation and a nation of laws. I mean, you think about even the idea on a very different scale of desegregating our nation's schools, the idea of the social and psychological toll that it had on not only black and brown children, but white children as well. The idea of it's not just those who are the targets of the reprehensible behavior, but those who are also witnessing, experiencing it, and growing up in a state where it exploits their biggest fears. It's very imperative to understand the entire holistic reaction.
Omar, after more than 2 weeks of questions, are we finally going to start getting some real answers from Texas officials and from the U.S. Justice Department, for that matter?
Well, Wolf, there's a few different processes happening at a few levels of government. At the state level, we are expecting the House Investigative Committee to produce a preliminary investigative report by the end of the month, is what we are hearing. Tomorrow, they're expecting to hear testimony from multiple people at the Texas Department of Public Safety and examine evidence, but we're told that's likely going to happen behind closed doors in executive session. At the federal level, we did get an announcement today from the Department of Justice. They will be launching their review into what happened here. It's not a criminal investigation, but again, an after-action review to look at the process and see if there are any future recommendations they could offer. It's something the mayor here asked for, and now that it's here, he thanked the DOJ for making the step and has full confidence it is going to be a fair and transparent process. But again, many people here waiting for answers.
Well, let's see what happens. Omar Jimenez, Anthony Barksdale, Laura Coates, guys, thank you very, very much. Important note, Laura will have more on the mass shooting crisis here in the United States when she anchors CNN Tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, later tonight. And just ahead, we'll talk more about gun violence and the push for common sense reform with the second highest ranking Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin. He's standing by live. Also ahead, will Ivanka Trump's video testimony be played during the January 6th Select Committee hearings that are about to kick off up on Capitol Hill? The panel's chairman now says it's a real possibility.
June 20th, a CNN concert event. Let's celebrate, educate, and lift every voice. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
When you take a step back and you see the Earth in its entirety, you understand that it's just an oasis in the cosmos. All around is nothing, no life, is blackness, emptiness. And there's this blue ball with everything we need to sustain human life and life in general, which is absolutely fragile. And it makes you want to cherish the Earth a little bit more. I'm Thomas Pesquet, I'm an astronaut for the European Space Agency. You can see a lot of the consequences of human activities from space. Some of them climate change, some of them just plain old pollution. It was definitely my experience of being in space and seeing it with my own eyes that made me want to advocate against climate change. I'm an ambassador for the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. We're trying to limit the production, the use of plastic, the production of waste, and so we came up with edible packaging, which is just such a fantastic and simple concept. We need foam to protect everything from shocks during launch into space. So what we did is we turned that foam into food. It's like gingerbread. Now our packaging is at the same time our source of food. It reduces the need to send cargo up. If we set ourselves on the right path, there's nothing we cannot do. We built that unbelievable facility in space. We're using it every day. I'm optimistic for the future. If we can make a space station fly, then we can save the planet.
Nigerian by blood, British by birth, and American by residence. It is important to me that those same strands of inclusivity that flow through me are mirrored in the stories that we tell. One World is a place where Africa has an equal seat at the global table alongside Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Every continent has a voice, and where everyone watching has a stake in the global conversation.
One World with Zain Asher, tonight on CNN.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've got very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Erin Burnett Out Front, tonight on CNN.
The January 6th Select Committee kicks off the first of 6 public hearings a little over 24 hours from now, revealing the results of its nearly year-long investigation. Let's bring in CNN special correspondent Jamie Gagel and CNN's chief legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. Jamie, what are you learning about tomorrow's primetime hearing tomorrow night? And specifically, is the American public going to be hearing from some of the people closest to the then President Trump?
I think tomorrow we're going to see a prosecutor, in effect, laying out a case, a preview of what's to come. And we've been told, we've been reporting for quite some time, that we're going to see new video, new testimony. They interviewed 1,000 different witnesses. And among those witnesses, Ivanka Trump, who was, let's remember, a first-hand witness. She was at the White House on January 6th. I think there will be other family members who've also gone in to testify. Maybe we will see Attorney General, then Attorney General Bill Barr, who played a key role because the committee wants to make the point that on December 1st, Bill Barr told Donald Trump there was no significant election fraud, and yet he kept going down this path.
Going and going.
Right.
So much of the plotting for this coup attempt, Jeffrey, as you know, and as our viewers know, it happened behind the scenes. So how do they bring that forward during the course of this public hearing?
You know, the famous Watergate question was, what did the president know and when did he know it? I think it's a little different. I think the question here is, what did Donald Trump do? Because, you know, what we don't know is how much, if at all, was President Trump involved in the planning or knowing about the storming of the Capitol? What role did he play in the attempt to intimidate the Vice President Pence? What role did he play in the attempt to put forth fake electors? All of that, as you say, took place behind the scenes. The people we need to hear from are Ivanka Trump, who was there, Mark Meadows, who was there, and also, I think very importantly, yesterday there was a ruling from a federal judge that said some of John Eastman's emails are going to come out. Eastman was the brains of the operation. He was the guy, the law professor, who was giving the legal advice that led to the effort to overturn the election. What do those emails show? That will start to show what the president did.
Jamie, you've been doing a lot of reporting on what the committee is up to. Who is their target audience for these hearings?
So I think obviously the American public, right? It's been a year and a half. They have to remind people. Some people have wanted to move on. Some Trump supporters still believe that it was tourists there. So I think the committee really wants to reach that audience. But I would say they have one other audience, and that is an audience of one, and that's Attorney General Merrick Garland. At the end of the day, the committee is presenting what they have learned for history, for the record. They are not going to indict anyone. A criminal referral, as Jeffrey would say, really doesn't mean anything. So the question is their evidence, their testimony, going to push Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice to take further action? According to my sources on the committee, they are hoping it will.
Yeah, I think that's their goal right now. How tall an order is it, Jeffrey, for the committee to actually change minds during the course of these hearings?
Well, one of the things we've learned about American politics in the Trump and post-Trump era is that there are not a lot of minds out there to be changed. I mean, this is a very locked-in audience, and there are a handful of probably suburban viewers who don't follow politics very carefully, but and haven't followed this investigation certainly the way we have. That's probably the audience. The Fox News audience, Fox will not be broadcasting the hearings. They're not the target audience because they're not changed. Their minds are not changed. But the handful of people who are open to new evidence, that's the audience. But I don't know. Maybe Jamie knows. I don't know how big that audience is of open-minded people.
We will find out soon enough, guys. Thank you very much, Jeffrey Toobin, Jamie Gangel. Always good to have you here in the Situation Room. Important note to our viewers, be sure to watch CNN's live coverage of the January 6th Select Committee hearings. It all begins tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, right after the Situation Room. Coming up, will the gun reform legislation being hammered out by Senate negotiators actually address the real problem? I'll speak with the number 2 Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin. He's standing by live. That's next.
Friday. New details on what happened inside the White House during the Capitol attack. The January 6 hearings. Live coverage starts Friday on CNN.
It is actually very complicated to move money around the world. Few companies can do it at scale. Few companies can do it in the number of countries that we do it. And so these companies that come together like MoneyGrams and like our competitors do really provide a very unique service, and that is to instantly move money, get funds from the United States to Mexico, literally in sub-seconds. For the ability to take $350 that you worked hard to earn and get it back to your mother so that she can pick it up in Mexico, use it for food, healthcare, housing, is actually a very unique service. If you're from many of the countries, Mexico, Philippines, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, some of the largest receive markets in the world, it's absolutely critical to the lives of the consumers in those countries. But many people don't appreciate that. If it's not the life that you live, then it's not something that you really ever really get involved in.
As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, host of CNN's First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley today.
This is the screen where it happens. The moments that can change the world.
These are the faces we see, the voices we empower. This is the work that continues, who we are today and what we can become.
This is journalism that reflects the world we live in.
I'm Hadass Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think? All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, tonight only on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
On Capitol Hill today, lawmakers heard a terrifying first-hand account of the Uvalde Elementary School massacre from one of the young survivors. Parents of victims of gun violence spoke out as well, begging the U.S. Congress to pass common-sense gun reform legislation. Listen.
And he went to there and shot my teacher and told my teacher goodnight and shot her in the head. And then he shot some of my classmates. He shot my friend that was next to me. And I thought he was going to come back to the room. So I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
Somewhere out there, there's a mom listening to our testimony, thinking, I can't even imagine their pain, not knowing that our reality will one day be hers, unless we act now.
Today, I come because I could have lost my baby girl. She is not the same little girl that I used to play with, hang around with, and do everything, because she was daddy's little girl.
After hearing from me and the other people testifying here today does not move you to act on gun laws, I invite you to my home to help me clean Zaire's wounds so that you may see up close the damage that has been caused to my son.
But making sure our children are safe from guns, that's the job of our politicians and leaders. In this case, you are the doctors, and our country is the patient. We are lying on the operating table, riddled with bullets like the children of Robb Elementary and so many other schools. We are bleeding out and you are not there.
All right, let's discuss with the #2 Democrat in the U.S. Senate, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Dick Durbin. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, Republican senators say they're making progress on gun control talks, but that the bulk of this deal will focus, they say, on mental health. Can Democrats get behind a gun control deal that barely addresses guns themselves?
Listen, Wolf, I have my own ideas about how to stop gun violence in America. I believe that we have to be resolute, determined, and we have to get it done quickly. Too many innocent people are dying all across this country, and more will continue as long as we waste our time. I will tell you this, though. I know as sure as I'm standing here today that the ultimate agreement is not going to be including everything I want. In fact, maybe few elements of things I want will be included. But if it is a step forward in saving lives in America and making us safer, I'm going to support it and work for more. I'm not going to come out empty-handed demanding the perfect before I give a vote in favor of this effort.
Privately, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has expressed openness to raising the age limit to buy semi-automatic weapons from 18 to 21. But Senator Thom Tillis says that idea hasn't even come up in these talks. Is that officially off the table?
I'm not in the talks, but I will tell you, I think Mitch McConnell is right. The idea that an 18-year-old would turn around and buy one of these assault weapons, these military weapons that don't just shoot a person, they pulverize the internal organs of a person, is unthinkable. An 18-year-old, many states they're not old enough to drink, they're not old enough to operate some equipment, and yet they can go and buy a killing machine like this and turn it loose on children, innocent children. It's an indication to me of a situation that's out of hand. I don't believe there's any need for military assault weapons for anyone who is legitimately a sportsman or a hunter, If you need a military assault weapon to kill a deer, you ought to stick to fishing. And the bottom line is, if you're just buying it for the pleasure of having this in your household, it's not worth it. It's more important that America be safe.
The Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, says he hopes, keyword hopes, he hopes there's a deal by the end of this week. Do you think that's a realistic timeline?
Listen, he's talking directly to the people who are negotiating this. I don't want to push him or shove him, but I do want to tell him there's a sense of urgency here. There is a national momentum because of the mass shootings that we've had in the last several weeks, a political momentum, which is rare. You can feel it on Capitol Hill. Take advantage of the wind behind our sails here. Move forward now. This may be one of the few opportunities in history to do it.
Republican Senator Pat Toomey says he's, quote, cautiously optimistic. For the first time in 10 years, he says, that the Senate will actually get something done. Do you share that level of optimism?
Only because when I go home, everyone is hearing exactly the same thing. People are exhorting us to do something. People are telling us it's unacceptable to do nothing. If you can't do your job, step out of the way and let somebody else take it. There's a feeling across America that it's time for us to put up or shut up.
Senator Dick Durbin, good luck to you and your colleagues. Let's hope you guys get it done. I say common sense gun reform is so essential right now here in the United States. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Wolf.
Just ahead, will Ukraine be forced to withdraw from its eastern territories amid an intensifying Russian onslaught? I'll discuss with the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States right after the break.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
On Culinary Journeys, meet Japan's Natsuko Shoji, a chef earning rave reviews. Inspired by art, she is a rising star in French cuisine. And in an industry where men dominate, see how she overcame life's challenges despite the odds, and is now paving the way for a new generation. Culinary Journeys, Sunday on CNN, in association with Ajinomoto.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the fate of the Donbas region is being decided right now in the battle for one key city. Our senior international correspondent Matthew Chance is on the ground for us in the war zone. Matthew, what can you tell us about Russia's latest push to capture eastern Ukraine?
Yeah, well, that push is continuing apace, and it seems that the Russians are making significant progress, particularly in the city of Severodonetsk, where there's been fierce fighting underway for some weeks now, with Ukrainian forces holding out as tenaciously as they can to make sure they extract the maximum amount of pain for the Russians as they move bit by bit towards taking full control over that city. It would be an important political victory for the Russians because it's the last city still nominally under Ukrainian control in the Luhansk region. Luhansk is one half of Donbass, and that's why it's so important for the Russians that say, you know, taking Donbass is a military priority for them. Elsewhere, counter-offensive operations are underway, according to the Ukrainian officials that we've spoken to try and take back territory, particularly down here in the south, from where I'm speaking to you as well, from Russian hands. Earlier, we got a chance to look at some of the US weaponry that's been given to Ukraine to help it defend itself and help it, of course, push Russians out of territory they've conquered in the past 4 months. An American M777 howitzer gun. A couple of them, in fact, we were taken to see earlier, a training mission there. These are very powerful, long-range artillery weapons that are currently being used. There are dozens of them, up to 90, according to Ukrainian officials, have already been delivered. Dozens of them having a real impact, we're told, on the front lines, not just here, but elsewhere in the country as well, Wolf.
All right, Matthew, stay safe over there. We'll be in touch. Matthew Chance on the ground for us in Ukraine. Thank you very, very much. For more on what's going on, I want to bring in Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got a lot going on right now, and we always appreciate your joining us. How close is Ukraine right now to losing this whole eastern region of the country? It looks like the Russians have the upper hand, at least right now.
Well, thank you, thank you, Wolf, for having me, and big thanks to Matthew to be on the ground and showing everything to the world. It's very important. Yes, the Russians temporarily control now almost 20% of the territory. The fight
20% of all of Ukraine?
Yes.
But what about in the eastern part?
So the eastern part, that's where the most difficult fight is right now. This is the artillery duel, where Russians essentially put in all the firepower they have, and they're trying not to even fight, but to essentially destroy everything and reduce everything to the rubble. Now, despite of the fact that they outnumber us, despite of the fact they have many more artillery and shells, and they also shoot from the Caspian and from all other places, our brave defenders are holding the ground even under this very difficult circumstances. And as we saw already in the battle for Kiev, we can lose something temporarily. Of course, we're trying to minimize that because we know what atrocities happen where Russians control the territories, but we will get it back.
I want our viewers to hear what President Zelensky told the Financial Times today. Watch this, listen to this.
We definitely have the strongest desire than Russians, but we are inferior in terms of equipment. Therefore, we are not capable of advancing. It will be very difficult for us. We are going to suffer more losses.
So I understand Ukraine definitely needs a lot more military support from the United States and the other NATO allies. But what are the most important things you need right now to turn the battlefield around?
Yes, I mean, we appreciate everything we have received, but as we started the war, having much less equipment than Russia, and of course now, already 105 days through the war, we need even more. So all the artillery, all the firepower, all the multi-rocket launch systems, the range, this is what we need. Not to shoot into Russia, as many people were afraid, but actually to defend our territory and to be able to defend it whilst also saving the lives of our defenders.
Has Ukraine given a commitment, a formal commitment to the United States and the other NATO allies, if they get long-range artillery and missiles, they won't fire into Russian territory?
Well, we always said that we are not going to fire into Russian territory. I mean, we never planned to. We never planned to attack Russia. We don't plan to do it in the future. All we need is for them to get out from our territory. So we need to have all the artillery because, you know, as I told you, the area that they temporarily control now is quite large.
Do you fear at all that American support for Ukraine might go down as this war drags on?
Well, there is always a risk of that, but I know that American people support us. And we hear from everyone here, from President to the very strong bipartisan support in Congress, that that support is very strong. And it's not only words, it's actions. So right now, the Congress provided very generously this large supplementary budget. And we just need to turn it into the weapons and get them as fast as possible into the battlefield so we can actually shorten this war.
Ambassador Markarova, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you. Good luck to all the people of Ukraine. We'll stay on top of it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very, very much. Coming up, new charges just filed against an armed man who threatened to kill the United States Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. We have details when we come back.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in New York, and this is CNN.
We share this place, we all belong.
Chicago's South Side can sometimes carry a difficult, if not dangerous, reputation.
The threats in our community are numerous. There's threats of violence with gangs, with family members. There's guns. There's inequities in the system where students can't even go outside.
But in recent years, a new problem has come to light: human trafficking.
Human trafficking is something that affects every single person, no matter what age, no matter what gender, no matter what identity. It affects every single person.
But inside the brick walls of the Curie Metropolitan High School, a talented group of students has decided to do something about it. The students are part of a collective called Performers for Change. They're led by dance instructor Melinda Wilson.
Yes.
For the students, it's a chance to express themselves while educating their classmates. For Wilson, it's a chance to bring what some might consider a taboo topic out of the shadows.
I hope that it gets teens to really understand the dynamic of how serious and horrific these crimes are.
My name is Øystein Jensen. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Odfjell SE. It is important that shipping becomes sustainable. It is important that shipping moves towards zero because we are a part of the global value chain We represent 2.8% of the total emission, and that emissions will still grow as the shipping industry will grow because the global demand for transportation is growing. And so the only solution is actually to go zero. Thank you to Sustainability Live. Being an event like this, I believe that is important because it gives you the wider understanding of the challenge. It gives us insight to areas that we hadn't thought about, because this challenge is nothing one company can solve by themselves. So that's why we need to collaborate, and we need to collaborate across the industry.
The world's biggest business stories in one place. Expert analysis from every corner of the globe. Marketplace, Africa, Asia, Europe, and Middle East. With CNNBusiness.com.
Once in a generation opportunity.
Technology, innovation, business.
Welcome to The Lead. We begin with breaking news. The United States has plunged into a recession. We're seeing infections at an all-time high. What's your reaction to that? Here are the facts.
The Lead with Jake Tapper.
We're getting new information right now about a threat to kill U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Let's go to our Justice correspondent, Jessica Schneider. She's joining us from just outside the High Court here in Washington. Jessica, what are you learning about the suspect and what he allegedly was planning to do?
Well, Wolf, this is a 26-year-old man from Simi Valley, California. He allegedly traveled to Maryland, he told the authorities, with the intent to break into a Supreme Court justice's home and kill him. And we now know that target is Justice Brett Kavanaugh. It all unfolded outside Brett Kavanaugh's home around 1 o'clock this morning. Authorities say the suspect got out of a taxi cab. He was dressed in all black, and he carried a suitcase and a backpack that were packed with weapons and ammunition, according to authorities. Inside the backpack and suitcase, a number of items, including a black tactical chest rig, a Glock 17 pistol with 2 magazines and ammunition, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, a crowbar, duct tape. The suspect, though, almost immediately after getting out of the cab, called 911 on himself, telling the dispatcher that he was suicidal and he had a gun. That's when police moved in. They arrested him. And when FBI agents interviewed him, he allegedly told them that he was upset about the leaked Supreme Court draft that was set to overturn Roe v. Wade that still has not been officially issued. Also saying that he was angered at the shooting, the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and saying that he was worried that Brett Kavanaugh would cast his vote against a New York gun law. That's still a decision that remains to be released from the Supreme Court. So the suspect was taken into federal custody. Authorities, though, say that that suspect had purchased the weapon and ammunition leading up to and with the specific intent to target Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The suspect, Wolf, was in federal court this afternoon in Maryland. He's currently being held. He's being charged with attempted murder of a U.S. judge. That could get him up to 20 years in prison, Wolf.
It's so disturbing. Jessica Schneider, outside the Supreme Court for us. Thank you very much. Let's get an update right now on President Biden. He's in Los Angeles hosting a summit with Latin American leaders. Our chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, is traveling with the president. Caitlin, Mexico is actually boycotting this meeting. How is the White House explaining the absence?
They're downplaying these absences of not just the president of Mexico, but several other leaders as well, Wolf. But they're really impossible to ignore because this is the Summit of the Americas. It is being hosted by President Biden, and several of these key leaders, including Mexico's president, have decided to boycott. And that is obviously notable that they declined the invitations to this summit from the U.S. president. And it's raising key questions about whether or not this agenda that is not only being overshadowed by their absences, but whether or not President Biden can actually get any momentum behind it while he's here on the ground. It's raising a lot of skepticism about what that's going to look like because the United States and President Biden's top aides had said that they wanted to show they had reestablished U.S. leadership in the region, that they were going to work on critical issues like migration, climate change, dealing with obviously the COVID-19 response and coordinating that. And now with several of these key leaders missing, it's raising big questions about that, Wolf. And as a reminder, the president of Mexico is boycotting because the United States did not extend invitations to the leaders of Venezuela, Nicaragua, or Cuba, saying that they did not want to invite dictators to this summit. That obviously has raised some concerns for Mexico and is why the leader, who is going to the White House next month, said he was not going to be joining. But it is raising questions about what this summit is going to actually accomplish and what that looks like at the end. We should note, Wolf, one leader that the president is going to be meeting with is the president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, who obviously was very close to former President Trump. And he has raised questions about whether or not President Biden is actually a legitimately elected president. And not only before, but in recent days even. And the White House says that they do plan to have a candid conversation between President Biden and the Brazilian president while they are here on the ground. It could create for some awkward moments, though, Wolf, of course, given the fact that he has raised these questions about whether or not Biden is actually the duly elected president of the United States.
Also tonight, Caitlin, there's a new CNN poll of polls on President Biden's job approval numbers. What does it show?
Yeah, obviously the president is here. He is focused on the foreign policy aspect of his job during this summit over the next few days, but still looking at these numbers back in Washington. As this new poll of polls comes out, it shows that President Biden has a 39% approval rating among the American people, obviously much lower than when he first took office, Wolf. And his main two issues that he has the lowest approval rating on, the lowest confidence from voters in his handling of it, is when it comes to the economy and when it comes to dealing with guns. Obviously, two things that the White House has been focused on lately. We should note they've been putting this focus on the economy, saying they are going to do a lot of events on that and inflation and focusing on Americans paying in this month of June. And this also comes when it comes to guns, as the White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain says they are cautiously optimistic about the progress that they're seeing on Capitol Hill.
We shall see. Caitlin Collins in Los Angeles for us. Thank you very much. Coming up, some of America's best-known Olympic athletes now seeking $1 billion from the FBI for allegedly mishandling their sexual abuse claims against Larry Nassar. We'll be right back.
June 20th, a CNN concert event. Let's celebrate, educate, and lift every voice. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
I'm David Culver in Beijing, and this is CNN.